Hello, everybody, and welcome in to the November edition, where some of us are late getting from backstage. Sorry about that. Welcome into the November edition of our Caregiver Conversation series by Carallel. Matt Perrin, Director of Caregiver Engagement at Carallel, back with you. And I have a merry band of our care advocates here joining me today. Really excited about this conversation. It happens to be the last day of National Family Caregivers Month for 2023. And hopefully, if you're on this call and you're caregiving, you're aware that it is National Family Caregivers Month. It's just a month where we as caregivers are celebrated, right? And hopefully there's a little bit more of a light shined on the work that family caregivers do every single day, caring for the people that they love. So in line with that, today's conversation is a celebration. So hopefully it's a lightning round of positivity. We're going to talk about the importance of celebrating our successes, no matter the size, and then we're going to just celebrate some examples of wins. So I know we've come with a bunch of recent stories, recent successes that we're going to share, and we'd love to hear from you. So that's the plan for this session for the next 27 minutes. Did I leave anything out, team? All right.
Nope.
Great. So before we jump in, I did the most important part, some housekeeping, right? All the logistics. So we are Carallel. If you're joining one of these sessions for the first time, you picked a great session to join. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Carallel is a caregiver support company. We make caregiving easier. Plain and simple, that's our mission. We do it in two primary ways. First and foremost, with our team of care advocates, of which today we're joined by a big chunk, which is awesome. But our care advocates provide personalized, tailored, one-on-one support. They're there for you while you're there for your loved one, for whatever you need, while related to the care of your loved one. And then we complement that one-on-one support by our care advocate team with our digital experience called My Care Desk, which is I like to say a one-stop shop in a web browser for anything you might need caregiving support wise. Lots of great articles and videos, like replays of these sessions, practical tips and tools that you can use in your day-to-day. So that's how we support family caregivers, and we make our service available through employers and health plans across the country. So if you're not sure whether or not you have access to the service, ask your employer or ask your health plan, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon. So now, last piece of housekeeping. And sorry, it's taking me a minute here today, but these are conversations. So as I mentioned a minute ago, we'd love to hear from you. There's no slides. We're just having a chat today, some real talk about, in this case, the importance of giving ourselves a collective pat on the back while we're caregiving. So would love to have you join the conversation. If you have perspectives to share, questions to ask, anything at all, go ahead and hit the chat button down on the bottom of your screen, and drop it in there. We'll address those as we go through the session. So now we're ready, guys. Now we're ready. So I want to pose an open-ended question, because I had a super hard time doing this when I was caregiving. But why is it important for us to be celebrating ourselves, to be stepping back and taking stock of the things we're accomplishing? Why is that important while we're caregiving? So I'll start with you, Megan. What are your thoughts on that?
It's so difficult to put yourself first when you're caring for someone else. But we as care advocates really try and remind people you can't take care of anyone if you're not taking care of you. So really finding that space and those moments to just take a breath and realize, what do I need today? And as little or as big as it can be, we want to help you find that. And it's different for everyone.
Yeah, totally agree, especially on the different for everyone part. So I'm really glad to hear you mention that. Jen, what are your thoughts? Jen Piscatello is the leader of our care advocate team. She joins us today. What are your thoughts on this? Why is it so important to be able to celebrate ourselves while we're in the midst of caring for somebody else?
Small celebrations are what keep you engaged and keep you in the role of being a caregiver. And those are really critical because it's hard. It's a hard job. And if we're not identifying some of those small wins, it can be hard to keep moving forward. And so as hard as it is sometimes to point those out, setting a reminder, finding something that's going to be the trigger to allow you to acknowledge the little things, the big things, and just taking time to realize that it's important in order for you to keep moving forward.
Love that, Jen. Thank you. Sheila, what about you? What's your take on this big question here?
Yeah, I agree with my fellow care advocates, but I think that one of the things we talk about a lot is filling your cup and keeping it full so that it can overflow to help others. And I feel like caregivers, we're so much focused on the outer that we don't take care of our cups, keeping everything full, keeping ourselves filled with whatever brings us joy. And if we let it go down, we don't have enough to give to others. So I think that's one of the most important things. And just as a little side note, I had spoken to a caregiver the other day who said she does a happy dance when she has one thing crossed off her list. So I think, oh, that's so cool. What a great idea. And no one's there to see her, and she's just doing a little happy dance. So
I love it. I love that. That's awesome. Happy dance. That's a good tip to put in the file away for future. Suggest people do a happy dance. Love it. Candace, what about you? What are your thoughts on this big open-ended question to start us off? Why is it so important for us to just celebrate, or at least be mindful of the things we're getting done, things we're accomplishing?
Great to celebrate yourself as the caregiver, because becoming a caregiver or entering into that role, there's no blueprint, right? So you have no idea what you're doing. And so being a caregiver is hard, becomes challenging. You become discouraged. So celebrating those small or big wins, being a caregiver, kind of validates you or makes you feel, okay, I'm doing a good job. So that's why I say just celebrate them, big or small. Small wins to just keep you encouraged and keep you pushing through this caregiving journey.
I love that, Candace, and you just hit the nail on the head for me, because in my experience, I just felt like a failure all the time, especially at the beginning, and it was awful. It's just like and there's like the once I got that thought in my head, I just wasn't used to not being able to like solve for things, right? And there's a lot that goes into that when we're caregiving, but it had a way of snowballing on me. And in reality, and thankfully I learned to step back and do what we're talking about today, although I was never really the best at it. But it just like that feeling that way, just like it had a way of kind of taking on a life of its own for me, and learning, thankfully, to step back and just like, all right, I know I just scheduled an appointment, and that really doesn't seem like much, but I've been trying to do that for however long, right? Like that's a win.
Exactly.
So for me, like you use the word discourage, Candace, and that spoke right to my personal experience of feeling that sense of failure as I was going through it. So, no, I love to hear that, I guess. And I'm ad-libbing here, so sorry we didn't talk about this question. But gotcha. So what if you could give one tip to someone, right? Because it's one thing, and I know a lot of what you all do every day with caregivers as care advocates is help them see, right? Help people see that they are actually they're not stuck, or they're not failing, or missing the mark. They're actually accomplishing things. They're making progress, which is all we can hope for. But when we're alone in our houses, or off in our day-to-day, like it's hard to conjure that. So is there one tip that you could offer somebody to, I'm sure there's more than one, but like, is there one little concise tip that you'd offer somebody to say, the next time you're feeling down like that, do this, to celebrate themselves, to or at least acknowledge that, yes, they are accomplishing stuff? Is there one tip?
One thing I would say that we talk about a lot is really identifying that care circle. Who around you can help with your loved one you're caring for? But then, in tandem with that, you need to find out who can help you. Who can you talk to? Who can you vent to? And it might be Carallel. It might be, hey, I need to just talk to someone for 5 minutes to bring me out of this funk. And finding ways to really just make yourself feel okay in that moment. It might not be the long-term solution. It might not be, set in stone, but thinking about how am I going to feel okay? And I just feel like talking to someone can be really helpful and mitigate those feelings of being alone and being the only one doing this.
Love it. Love it, Megan. Thank you for that. Anyone else? And don't feel pressure if you don't have one, because I totally went off. I went far afield here. I didn't. Sorry to ad lib on you, but it just occurred to me that, and as always, we're focused on the practical in these conversations. So if you have a tip, would love to hear it.
I'm in total agreement with Megan, utilizing your resources. But as you stated, Matt, when you're home alone and you're having those thoughts of that you're not doing well or you're failing as a caregiver, or I didn't get this done today, I would simply say, and it will take practice, but I would simply say, give yourself some grace, because we're so open to giving others grace, but never giving ourselves grace. So just say, give yourselves grace. Provide yourself with a lot of self-talk in those midnight hours, or when you're by yourself, that this is a job. It's not an easy job. I love this individual and I'm doing well.
Yeah.
I recently heard this concept, which I don't know that it's necessarily new, but it was like for me, is that our brains are more likely to go automatically to the fear side of things, like, oh, and I don't know what I'm going to do about this. What about this? What about this? And that sort of like maybe fight or flight sort of concept. But our brains don't automatically go to, you're doing a great job. You're doing everything you can. This is all going to work out. Stay positive. Like our brains don't do that on their own. So knowing that, I think, is really insightful and really helpful to know, like, maybe you need to keep like a little journal of like things that are good, things that are going well, things that, bring you joy, or whatever it might be, because reminding yourself of those affirmations or those positive thoughts are things that you're going to be needing to do on a more proactive sort of basis. Your brain will definitely find those other fears and things like that. But when those start to come up, how do you kind of get yourself on a different path? And being mindful of that and knowing that that's something you need to be more proactive is something that might be a good tip to take away.
Yeah,
I love that, Jen. Thank you. Yeah.
I was going to say also, it's like creating new habits, right? And getting rid of older habits. But the last thing that I think of is taking a little bit of space, putting some space between your problem and something else that you want to do. So it's like stepping outside, taking a deep breath, getting away from the situation gives you the opportunity to kind of reset your mind. And like Jen was saying, interrupt that pattern of negative thinking maybe and look at something different. So it's something as simple as stepping out on your front porch or your back porch and taking a deep breath, seeing the sky, seeing something bigger than all the problems right in front of you.
I love it. And Jen and Candace, I mean, you're hitting on something. So I had a bunch of mantras that I sort of a funny story, but my mom's doctor, primary care, who neither of us were huge fans of, but anyway, she was the first person to tell me I should have a mantra as I was carrying. Like, I was clearly stressed in one particular appointment, and I can vividly remember my eyes rolling as she was telling me, like, yeah, right, thinking to myself. And anyway, fast forward a year, I don't know, some period of time, and I was like, what the heck? And I had stickies of "you're doing the best you can" that were on my mirror in the bathroom, on my monitor at work. Like, I just had that. For me, over time I got more, and they were really helpful, but kind of related to what you're talking about, Jen, and Candace there, just around the self-talk and But you're doing the best you can was helpful for me. Everybody's different, but anyway, interesting to hear you both kind of come up with sort of from slightly different angles, come to that point of the self-talk. So okay, well, thank you all for those perspectives. Just a reminder to the audience, if there are things that have worked for you, or questions, or things you want to celebrate, we'd love to celebrate them with you. So drop them in the chat or the QA. And maybe this is a good time to segue. I mean, let's get the party started, right? Who wants to go first? Who's got a good example of a win or a caregiving success that they'd like to share? I feel like smiling, so I want to hear about it.
Good one that I just heard yesterday morning, actually.
Okay.
And this was a story that we hear a lot. And it was a woman who was caring for her husband with dementia for an extended period of time, years. And, she's just overwhelmed at hearing the repeated questions again and again and again. And it dawned on her that she could have a fill-in. And she got an Alexa. And she had it in the living room with her husband, and he would ask Alexa questions, and Alexa would answer him. He was really happy, and his wife got to go in the kitchen and make a meal. So I thought that was so creative, and I thought,
That's
wow, what a great
awesome.
win.
That is amazing.
That's
Amazing.
great.
Yeah.
I love it.
So creative. I like that.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's awesome. I'd love to talk to that person to get more information on the situation, because that was, as a dementia caregiver, I could feel what this person was feeling as you were sort of introing that, Sheila. So that's tremendous. Excellent. That's a lot to live up to, actually, in terms of creativity. So I feel bad for who goes next, but
Okay, I'm going to go next. It's more of a general one.
Okay.
But I honestly, and as the director of the Care Advocate team, I hear and see all the different interactions we have. And honestly, I really feel like a real small but big win is when we have these interactions, when caregivers make that choice to pick up the phone or send us a live chat or send us an email. Like, that is big. That is really big. Whether it's your first time, whether it's your 10th time, like reaching out to get some clarity, some guidance, some help, some space to cry or share a story or whatever it might be. I feel like that is such a big win. So that's all I just have. I know it's kind of a blanket win, but it really is. With every single interaction we have, I feel like is a caregiver win.
Agreed. And I'm taking that to mean, Jen, sort of the act of a caregiver raising their hand, right?
Yeah.
And it could be to us at Carallel, it could be to their friend or a family member, their doctor, it could be to anyone, right? But so I'm here for that one for sure. And sort of relates to one that I was going to share, actually. So nice segue. Thank you, Jen. But for me, it was like one of the bigger wins that I had was actually for the first time seeing myself as my mom's caregiver. Self-identifying actually as a caregiver. And again, it was a situation with Alzheimer's disease and dementia, and my mom was still living alone for the first 2 years of technically her living with Alzheimer's disease. She was functioning, and but I was a caregiver at that point. I was doing the work. I was going back and forth, driving 3 hours multiple times a week. I was doing all the things, but didn't see myself in that light. So I was carrying it as a result, pretty much all alone, and I was getting crushed under the weight. And the identity, just seeing myself, being able to say, well, shoot, I really am a caregiver, sort of opened these doors to me. I mean, it wasn't a magic wand and made everything easy by any stretch, but it showed me that there was support out there. There were other people who were going through it. It made me feel like I had as I communicated what was going on, it made me feel like people were, people had my back. So that was a huge win. Just the, on a basic fundamental level, kind of related to what you're talking about, Jen, of just saying to myself, I am a caregiver. So, yeah, that was the one I came prepared to share. So
I recently had someone who contacted us, and we had been in an ongoing conversation talking about the challenges of caregiving. And this caregiver was really down, had her own health struggles while caring for her mom, but constantly, as we've said before, putting someone else first. And I remember on the fourth call, she was elated, and she said, I made a doctor's appointment for me. I'm having my sister come. And I've had these conversations before, but I could just feel the weight lifted off her, knowing that, like, I'm going to get some of my, and her health, it's very cute. There's very small things, but it hurts. And it's important to get those things checked out. And I think so many times we push things to the side and don't worry about me, worrying about whatever you're, thinking about caring for, doing in those moments, because we're caregivers, but we're also lots of other things. So we have so many things on our plate. And she was just so excited. And I just felt so happy for her. And now, now I'm going to throw in do a happy dance, because it's just so great. It was awesome. And I just really, I want to celebrate those things that we do for us.
I love it. I love it. Thanks, Megan. Makes me smile hearing that. So that's a good one. Candace, what about you? Got any?
Yes. I guess I do. So I'm still fairly new to the group. One of the newest ones within this group. So I haven't had several calls, but I have had one with one individual who basically never, like you said, never identified themselves as a caregiver. Because a lot of times you get a call to say, hey, I want to become my mom, my dad, my aunt's caregiver. And I'm like, okay, well, you already are that caregiver. Did you know that already? But they never, like you said, they never considered themselves that caregiver, because they felt those things that they did, they weren't caregiving things, I guess. So really identifying that for them, and then also opening up what Megan said, you are so much more than just a caregiver also. So not just being the identity of just a caregiver, but you are a mom, you are a dad, you are an aunt, uncle, you are, the director, you are so many other things outside of just being a caregiver.
Yeah.
And so that made her smile. I can say that. She was just like, oh, you're God sent, you just get all these compliments.
I love it,
which
though.
makes everything worthwhile, during your day, when you just get that one compliment of helping that one individual.
Yeah. But there's something in there, woven in there, Candace, that is sort of a theme that I wanted to mention. Is like, it's, and I know this just because I work with you all and we talk all the time, and but like, and you, I think a few of you have actually even sort of referenced this in today's conversation, but you can almost feel when someone realizes that something's been accomplished, you can almost feel this sort of, weight lifting, right? I think is the way you put it, Megan. And that seems to be just a really common theme, right? Not just, again, with care advocates, but in general. Like, that's why we want to talk about celebrating our accomplishments, like, because it actually does, I believe, sort of lift, some of the weight that you're feeling, right? Like that. So that's the thing. That's why it matters, in my opinion. Like, that's why this conversation is on the schedule. And it most of the examples, like, they're small little examples. So it doesn't have to be this big thing. Right. Which is, but it's so when you're in the midst of it, in the weeds of caregiving, it's so hard to see it that way. So yeah, but just thank you all for sharing that perspective. Do you have any, are there any others that you wanted to mention? I've noticed time flies when we're having fun, as always here. We got about 4 minutes left. Are there any others that come to mind I have one if you guys don't, but if you do, please, by all means, have at it.
I think that one, and you may have heard of these before, but I also spoke with someone recently who was really having trouble sleeping. Her mother was living with her and she was worried about her mother in the next room. So to just get one of those cheapo cameras inside just gave her peace of mind and allowed her to see the camera, see her mom was asleep in the next room and not getting up or not fidgeting or not in any discomfort, and was able to sleep better, which I thought it's very simple. You don't have to spend a lot of money, and it got her a good night's sleep, which everybody who's caring for someone needs.
I love
That is a
that.
win.
Yeah, I
A
love
good
that.
night's sleep is a win for sure.
I love that
Even
one.
sometimes taking a nap is like a
I
win.
know.
You know,
Yeah.
you can squeeze in a little, 20-30 minute siesta. That's a win.
Exactly.
bet.
Exactly. But I love that one, Sheila, because she took the step, right? Like
Mhm.
she took a step. Like
Mhm.
that probably felt, even though, like if you're looking at that in the vacuum, it's like, oh, you gotta ordered a camera on Amazon or went to, Walmart and bought a little camera. Like that could seem like climbing Everest when you're in the middle of
Right.
caregiving, so
For
it took
sure.
that step. So I love it. And then related, similarly, real quick before we wrap up, but as I mentioned, my mom for the first couple of years was living on her own. I'm 3 hours away. I'm an only child. It was a long process to get her to agree to either move with our family, which would be taking her out of where she had spent the last 50 years of her life, or to move into a more supportive environment, i.e. assisted living at that time. And I'll never forget. I had the first. I couldn't. It was a really hard thing for me to bring up. My mom was very fiercely independent, as most of us are and would be. But I had the first conversation with her about moving into this more supportive environment, and it did not go well. It went horribly, actually. But I had the conversation, and my wife and I at the time, thankfully, we were working with someone because we were also caring for my father-in-law, and she was basically helping us. She was our care advocate at that time. Like she was helping us. She was there for us while we were there for our parents. And I'm like, oh, the conversation went horribly. I was telling her all about it. I felt so defeated, and she just looked at me dead in the eye and was like, I totally get that you feel defeated, but that is a success because you had the first conversation. So same thing, like I had taken that step, and she was nudging me to say, look, you can't expect a big decision like this to be made in one conversation, A, and B, you've taken the hardest step, which is the first step, to actually start the conversation. So, again, a smaller win sort of nested in this bigger thing. Ultimately, it was a win because we got her transitioned into, a place that was good for her. But, just another reiteration of the small little victories meaning so much. And
Even the fact that you shared that with her, I think is also
coming to
much
your
a
point.
win.
Exactly. I can't say that I did out of like any proactive thought. I was more just annoyed and desperate and angry and venting, but hey, a step nonetheless. So okay, we are at time, so we're gonna have to end it. Thank you all so much. Candace, Sheila, Jen, Megan, really appreciate you being here. Audience, same thing. We have one more of these sessions for 2023. It's happening on Wednesday, December 20th. I believe that's Wednesday, December 20th at noon, regular time. This one's different. I'll be joined by our Chief Clinical Officer, Dr. Jeff Rubin, excuse me. Hope he doesn't hear that. But we're actually going to be using the time Jeff's going to lead a guided meditation for caregivers. So it actually won't be much of a conversation.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a guided meditation with Dr. Jeff Rubin, our Chief Clinical Officer. So I'm psyched about that one. Hope you can join us. I did drop a link to our schedule page. You can also see all the replays there as well on Carallel.com. So that's in the chat. And thank you all so much.
Thank you, Matt.